Well, hello, good evening and welcome to World Today, your daily window to the world. I'm Gautam Roy. Now on the show tonight, the latest on the nuclear deal standoff between the new Biden administration and the US as well as Iran. And it's been one full month ever since Myanmar was forcibly returned to military rule, with the situation going from bad to worse. But first, our headlines. Myanmar Boils Yangon police fires tear gas at anti-coup protesters as demonstrations against Myanmar's military government continue across the country in spite of authorities adopting a more heavy-handed response. Ousted Myanmar civilian leader Aung San Suu Kyi faces court via video link, 2 more charges slapped. Hundreds of pro-democracy protesters gathered at a court in Hong Kong where 47 activists faced charges of conspiracy to commit subversion. Beijing enforced the law criminalizing subversive acts last year, saying it was needed to bring stability. Former US President Donald Trump hints that he might run for office again in 2024. Clears the air, says no plans to launch a new political party. The world battles COVID-19 pandemic. More than 11 crore 47 lakh coronavirus cases have been reported worldwide. Global death toll crosses 25 lakh. Over 9 crore 3 lakh people have recovered so far as well. And diversity, Netflix dominate Golden Globes as Nomadland wins Best Drama Movie. Sacha Baron Cohen, the creator of Borat's subsequent movie film from Amazon Studios, was named Best Comedy Movie Actor, while singer Andra Day was a surprise winner for her lead role in The United States vs. Billie Holiday. The Queen's Gambit wins Best TV Limited Series at the Golden Globes. Okay, let's begin the show with the big news. Well, it's been 1 month since Myanmar was forced to return to military rule. Protesters have been seeking the return of democracy, but Sunday gave clear evidence that the military junta is hell-bent on retaining power through brutal, violent means. At least 18 protesters were killed, and to make matters worse, the very next day, fresh charges, 2 of them, were pressed against detained democratic leader Aung San Suu Kyi. Here's more.
Myanmar is boiling. Protests and chaos have become a routine affair. Protesters took to the streets again on Monday, despite Sunday seeing the deadliest day yet with 18 killed. Yangon police once again on Monday fired tear gas at anti-coup protesters as demonstrations against Myanmar's military government continue across the country, despite authorities adopting a more heavy-handed response. Even children have joined the protests now. About a dozen children marched and chanted, protesting in Myanmar's second-largest city, Mandalay. It comes as protesters marched in Myanmar in defiance of a crackdown by security forces that killed at least 18 people a day earlier. Ousted Myanmar civil leader Aung San Suu Kyi faced court on Monday via video link. The court filed 2 more charges against her. She was seen by her lawyer for the first time since a military coup. She has been held at an undisclosed location since the coup on February 1. Reports say Myanmar's new election commission has annulled the November 2020 election results on Friday that had declared Aung San Suu Kyi's massive victory. Firing, deaths, chaos were clearly witnessed on Sunday. Anti-coup protesters filled the streets of Yangon on February 28 as police launched their most sweeping crackdown in 3 weeks of nationwide protests against military rule, arresting hundreds of people. Confrontations developed as people came out despite the police operation, chanting and singing. Police fired on protesters in Myanmar, and then came the news of deaths from several cities. These police used live rounds and tear gas It all started on Saturday when security forces began the violent crackdown after weeks of largely peaceful protests against the February 1 military takeover. The videos show cops scattering crowds in the streets with smoke bombs, tear gas and also firing guns. Protesters in Yangon hurled Molotov cocktails at the police, who fired back at them on Sunday morning as the crackdown on military coup demonstrations entered a second day. Video filmed by local media also showed chaotic scenes. Protesters dragged away injured people to ensure their safety. The police operation was expanded on Sunday as coup leaders sought to quash a civil disobedience campaign that has shown no sign of ending. Myanmar was thrown into chaos when the army seized power and detained elected leader Aung San Suu Kyi and much of her party leadership, alleging fraud. In a November election, her party won by a landslide. The coup, which stalled Myanmar's progress towards democracy after nearly 50 years of military rule, has brought hundreds of thousands of protesters onto the streets and drawn condemnation from Western countries, with some imposing limited sanctions. The US has already imposed sanctions on Myanmar's military leaders since the army seized power. World Today Desk, DD India.
So, which way is Myanmar headed now? Let's try and find that out. We have Dr. Negin Kipin with us. He's Executive Director, Center for Southeast Asian Studies, Jindal School of International Affairs. Thank you for joining us, Dr. Kipin. What can you tell us about how the situation is evolving? Because now the U.S. said that their National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, said that the U.S. is planning more action, perhaps more sanctions could be imposed, but it just seems that it doesn't make any difference to the military rulers.
All right, first of all, thank you for having me on the show. Let's start with how this started. If you look at the past, the previous coups, especially in the 1988 coup, and when the international community was sharply divided on engagement on the other hand and sanctions on the other. So unfortunately, what we are seeing now is also somehow a repeat of a history whereby we see a division within the international community. But what the need of the hour now is some kind of a unified voice or a coordinated approach by the international community, even if there are sanction groups, which is led by the United States and European Union and some other countries. And this was expected, it was not unexpected. But what it needs to be done more here is not just the sanction, but also we need to engage with the military leaders, not just the military leaders, but even the NLD leaders and the civil society groups on the ground, whereby there can be some kind of a negotiated settlement. Otherwise, we are going to see a repeat of the 1988 heavy or brutally crass or crackdown, whereby there was a huge humanitarian crisis, and that's likely to happen again with what we see on the ground now.
Yes, but if the situation remains the same and the protesters remain undeterred, because that's what the buzz on the internet seems to suggest, that after Sunday's, that is yesterday's crackdown, instead of being successful in putting down the protesters, and today now the two charges have been further brought in against Aung San Suu Kyi, the military rulers have aggravated the protesters even more.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's the point. In fact, if I may take a different approach, the military undermine. First of all, the military undermine the power of the people. Now, if you look at the charges that were brought against Aung San Suu Kyi, were something that we should not be surprised at all. In fact, there may be other more charges coming forward or being charged or upon her again. And the military is trying to find a pretext or an excuse for putting her longer or perhaps indefinitely and try to prevent her from any future election. What the need of the hour, as I said earlier, is a united or a unified international voice. For example, tomorrow ASEAN countries are going to deliberate or discuss on the issue, and we hope ASEAN is taking more a proactive approach, whereby they stand together and opposing some this illegal power takeover from the military leadership. See, now the situation on the ground is no longer between one person or between Aung San Suu Kyi and the military leadership, or NLD and the military leadership. It has become what we call a contestation or competition between military dictatorship and democracy, whereby people who do not love, who do not want to be under the military dictatorship for another maybe year or 2 years or maybe 5, 10, 20 years down the road, they don't want to see any military rule coming back. So they would like to be under a free democratic country. If you look at the past 10 years, Myanmar enjoys some form of although it was not a complete democracy, it tasted the what we call democracy, whereby they enjoy a relatively free media and also what we call exchange with the international community, with the outside world, connected to the outside world. And you can see about the social networks, for example, Facebook, which is quite popular. The people do not want to go back to the dark days of history, whereby the military says whatever they want and people follow. People are more connected to the international community.
Yes.
They are more resilient against the military dictatorship at this time.
Yes, but you mentioned ASEAN meeting and taking a forthright stand, but do you think that will happen? Because some of the ASEAN constituents have so far said that it's an internal matter for Myanmar to deal with.
Yeah, unfortunately that's the case. And not just that, ASEAN has a policy of non-interference in the internal affairs of member states, as well as a consensus-based approach. But unlike the previous times, I think we see what we call some concrete actions from ASEAN leaders, especially Indonesia is taking the lead in rallying the other member states to come together to somehow try to bring some kind of a negotiated settlement or reconciliation between the different parties. If you look at, for example, there is a history of the Myanmar military who are strongly against or anathema to the Western intervention, or let's say the Western what we call engagement, or the Western what they say interference in the internal affairs of the country.
Right.
But it is ASEAN which has been having an advantage over the other international community members, or especially the United States and the Western nations. So the role of ASEAN is critical at this point. If you look at what the Singapore foreign minister said today in the parliament, saying that the bloodshed is unacceptable, the military has to end this immediately and release the leaders who are detained and go back to the part of democratic transition. I think this is something that more leaders come forward and say what is happening in Myanmar is, of course, internal affairs of a member state, but if things go on worse, if we see a large humanitarian crisis, it's going to tarnish the image of ASEAN as a regional grouping, as well as we are going to see hundreds, if not thousands of people fleeing the country and taking shelters in some of these countries. In fact, we may see a flood of refugees coming to India as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we've seen that in the past, and that brings the question of neighbors into this scenario as well, because when you say that a humanitarian crisis could be in the offing, that will cause concern to India, to Bangladesh, even to China, which so far has been quite ambivalent about the entire situation in Myanmar.
Yes, let's start with China. China, as we all know, has been one of the staunchest ally of the military leadership in the past. But if you look at the past 5 years, it was not necessarily China was wanting to establish ties only with the military. In fact,
I think China was making some good progress with Aung San Suu Kyi herself.
Yeah. In fact, Aung San Suu Kyi had a very robust relations with Chinese leadership. In fact, if you look at under the Belt and Road Initiative, there was China and Myanmar Economic Corridor was signed under her leadership. The point is that for China, internal stability is important because they share a land border. Plus, some of the ethnic groups inside Myanmar are ethnically speaking Chinese. Therefore, if there's a disturbance in instability in the country, it is going to affect Chinese investments, Chinese businesses in the country. China doesn't want to see. And so for China to remain silent at this point is, I think it is a loss, not just for Myanmar and other neighbors, but it's a loss for China, because there is not going to be any what we call regular, normal transaction or economic activities as long as there is a political instability in the country.
Yes.
So it is important for China to do something, to speak privately to the military leadership that there has to be calm, there has to be a path to democratic transition whereby there is a political stability. And if we coming to India, and of course India has had its own reason for being not condemning or not being vocal enough. If you look at following the 1988 pro-democracy uprising, India was one of the most vocal countries on human rights and democracy. But we know that because of the Look East policy, Act East policy, there are reasons why, for example, security regions, economic region, and the region to counterbalance China. But I think India, in the long run, either it's for China or India, it would be good to have a stable Myanmar. As long as the protests go on, it is not good for India either. I mean, not just India, but any country who would like to continue doing normal business with the military junta. So we need to see peace and stability in the country for all parties to see their objectives or their interests sustained in the long run.
And you see an initiative towards that being made, perhaps by ASEAN countries. They could somehow bring to bear their collective opinion, which perhaps the junta will have to consider seriously.
I believe, and I hope that is the case. See, for example, I have argued in some of my pieces that ASEAN is the only link which the international community and Myanmar has at the moment, because Myanmar is a member of ASEAN, and in the past, for example, if you look at the 2008 cyclone Nargis, when the Western nations were trying to enter into the country, the military leaders strongly objected or opposed the idea, and ASEAN jumped in and formed a task force whereby it coordinated international relief and assistance effort. So I think in this case too, ASEAN being Myanmar being part of ASEAN would be able to forge some kind of international coordinated approach whereby not just America, not just the West, but neighbor countries including India, China, Japan, and Australia and other countries can come together and work something for the peace and stability of the country. I think even if not for political reason, the international community ought to unite to condemn the violence against the peaceful protesters, and also for the stability and for the progress of the country, and also to preserve and to promote and to sustain their future long-term economic interests.
Right. And in the meantime, even if stricter measures are taken by Western powers like the US, UK, more sanctions are imposed, do you think that might also have an impact? That is something that the junta, the generals will consider as well, or that's just a pinprick?
See, in the past, what we saw was sanctions are not necessarily meant to change a regime, but rather it is a tool to say or to send a message or to convey a message to the military leaders that your actions are unacceptable, you need to come back to the table and you need to restore democracy, trying to send a strong message to the military leadership that their actions are acceptable. And second reason is that these sanctions are made to morally support the pro-democracy forces, or let's say the protesters in this case. But again, as I said in the opening statement, sanctions alone is not sufficient. Therefore, sanctions has to be targeted one, selective one, targeting the military firms, business associated with the military leaders and their cronies and their institutions. Not only that, Myanmar should not be completely isolated, abandoned by the international community for whatever reason it is. Instead, there should be board, what we call, even if there is sanctions, there should be also a way and room for engagement whereby, as I said, ASEAN could play a vital role in, trying to mitigate the situation and also perhaps pave the way for any future political solution in the country.
Okay, let's see if things progress in that direction, because right now the situation could go either way. It could either, the indications are that things might worsen before they get better, but let's hope that does not happen. Thank you so much for joining us for the moment, Professor. Okay, now hundreds of people in Hong Kong gathered outside a court on Monday, on the 1st of March, which is today, as the court was to hold a hearing of dozens of activists detained in January. Hong Kong's government said police took action specifically targeting active players who organized, planned, committed or participated in acts of subversion. The arrests invited a sharp reaction from Western capitals and the human rights body. The human rights body also said that the latest arrests indicate that the offence of subversion under the national security law is indeed being used to detain individuals for exercising legitimate rights to participate in political and public life. Hong Kong was a British colony until 1997 and is now a semi-autonomous Chinese territory. Following unrest and protests, China implemented a controversial new security law in July 2020, triggering international criticism. Beijing enforced the law criminalizing subversive acts last year, saying it was needed to bring stability.
There is a large and very vocal crowd of pro-democracy supporters gathering outside court as 47 members of the pro-democracy movement, ranging from local activists to district councillors all the way up to senior former lawmakers in the city, are due to face charges of subverting state power. They've been arrested and charged because of their involvement in organising unofficial primaries ahead of the city's election. The authorities accusing them of trying to paralyse the government by building up enough support to win enough seats to shut down any piece of government legislation that would have followed. That election itself was postponed until September of this year on the grounds of COVID-19 pandemic concerns. That decision itself controversial and was met with much criticism from the democracy camp, who accused the government of postponing the election purely on political grounds because of their concerns of losing seats. So here we are outside the court many months later, and some 47 of those people involved in organising those primaries now facing charges under the national security law. The maximum penalty under this law is life imprisonment. This charge and these arrests have been condemned by international areas such as the European Union and the UK. The UK Foreign Minister saying this is a deeply disturbing example of what he says is Beijing's attempt to crack down on political dissent in Hong Kong. And really, with 47 members across the spectrum of political activism here now coming to court, it really reduces significantly any momentum that the pro-democracy camp still has in Hong Kong, and that's why we're seeing so many supporters come out today trying to show that they still believe that there is some force that can be reckoned with on the pro-democracy side, despite these high number of arrests and charges being levied under the city's national security law, which the government continues to say is really here to stabilise the city and reduce the chance of any further social unrest like the many months of which that rocked the city in 2019.
That was Richard Kimber reporting from Hong Kong. Now, Iran on Sunday ruled out holding an informal meeting with the United States and other major powers to discuss ways to salvage the unraveling 2015 nuclear deal, insisting Washington must first lift all its unilateral sanctions. The United States said it was disappointed but remained ready to re-engage in meaningful diplomacy and would consult with other major powers to seek a way forward. Iranian officials had said Tehran was studying a proposal by European Union Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell to hold an informal meeting with other parties to the nuclear pact and the United States, which reimposed sanctions on Iran after then-President Donald Trump quit the deal in 2018. Meanwhile, the US said it was disappointed but remained ready to re-engage in meaningful diplomacy and would consult with other major powers to seek a way forward. The new administration of President Joe Biden has said it is ready to talk to Iran about both nations resuming compliance with the accord, which scrapped broad economic sanctions against Iran in return for curbs intended to prevent it from acquiring nuclear weapons, something Iran says it does not want. But the parties cannot agree who should make the first move. Iran says the United States must lift sanctions, while Washington says Tehran must return to compliance with the deal, which Iran has been progressively breaching since 2019. So clearly this entire nuclear deal that Iran has with the 6 Western powers hangs in balance, and it goes back to July 2015. The agreement was reached between Iran and P5+1 countries. The agreement was termed Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, or JCPOA. Now P5+1 included the US, China, France, Germany, Russia and the UK. Tehran agreed to limit uranium enrichment under the deal. That was what its part was. And it also agreed to allow international inspectors access to its nuclear facilities. Now, on the 16th of January 2016, the sanctions imposed on Tehran were lifted in return of what Tehran said it will do. May 2018, what happened? Then US President Donald Trump announced unilateral withdrawal, and Trump reimposed economic sanctions to force Iran to renegotiate the deal. Trump wanted to place indefinite curbs on Tehran's nuclear program, and apart from that, he also wanted Tehran to halt ballistic missile development program. Iran refused and returned to enriching uranium. Now, in July 2019, Iran breached 3.67% cap on uranium enrichment for the first time. And then things progressed on further. In January 2021, Tehran announced it has resumed enriching uranium to 20% purity. Now, weapons-grade uranium is 90% purity, so Iran is nowhere near that. It says that its nuclear program is still peaceful. That's what it's always maintained. But on the 7th of February 2021, US President Joe Biden said he will not lift sanctions against Iran, very categorically in a television interview. Biden also said Iran needs to comply with agreed terms under the 2015 deal. But Iran said very clearly it will not return to compliance only after, it will only in fact return to compliance if sanctions are lifted. Now, last month on the 18th, Biden administration rescinded Trump administration's 3 letters to UNSC, a bit of a concession it seemed for Iran. Now, what happened in September 2020, last year, Trump administration has asserted all UN sanctions were reimposed on Iran. And in Feb 18, 2021, which is this year, Biden administration also eased travel limits on UN accredited Iranian diplomats. Now, again, Trump administration had imposed severe restrictions confining Iranian diplomats. They couldn't go beyond certain limits in New York and other places, but those have now been softened. But still, Iran remains completely unrelenting as far as it wanting the US to take away its sanctions first is concerned. So Iran is holding fast. It's still a game of who blinks first. Meanwhile, in the US, former US President Donald Trump, yes, the man who is responsible for the situation in Iran as well, has cleared the air, saying he has no plans to launch a new political party. In his first speech since Democrat Joe Biden became president, he also hinted that he might run for office again in 2024.
Biden has failed in his #1 duty as chief executive, enforcing America's laws. This alone should be reason enough for Democrats to suffer withering losses in the midterms and to lose the White House decisively 4 years from now. Actually, as you know, they just lost the White House, but it's one of those things. But who knows? Who knows? I may even decide to beat them for a 3rd time, okay? Beat them for a 3rd time. And I want you to know that I'm going to continue to fight right by your side. We will do what we've done right from the beginning, which is to win. We're not starting new parties. You know, they kept saying, he's going to start a brand new party. We have the Republican Party. It's going to unite and be stronger than ever before. I am not starting a new party. That was fake news. Fake news, no. Wouldn't that be brilliant? Let's start a new party and let's divide our vote so that you can never win. No, we're not interested in that. No. We must stand tall in the party. So no matter how much the Washington establishment and the powerful special interests may want to silence us, let there be no doubt we will be victorious and America will be stronger and greater than ever before.
Okay, we'll have to see what happens. Still some time to go as far as 2024 is concerned. Let us now take an update on the COVID-19 pandemic from across the world as well. Well, as of now, more than 11 crore 47 lakh coronavirus cases have been reported worldwide. The global death toll due to the coronavirus pandemic has crossed 25 lakh and stands at over 25 lakh 44,000. Over 9 crore 3 lakh people have recovered from the virus as well. The US continues to remain the worst hit country by the pandemic so far in the world and has reported over 2 crore 92 lakh cases of the virus, with the death toll surging past 5 lakh 25,000. Brazil follows the US in terms of the death toll, with 2 lakh 55,000 people no more because of the virus. Meanwhile, Dr. Anthony Fauci, the top US infectious diseases official, said that he would take Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine as he encourages Americans to accept any of the 3 approved shots. He also urged everyone in the US to get a vaccination done as soon as it's their turn.
All 3 of them are really quite good, and people should take the one that's most available to them. If you go to a place and you have J&J and that's the one that's available now, I would take it. I personally would do the same thing. I think people need to get vaccinated as quickly and as expeditiously as possible. And if I would go to a place where they had J&J, I would have no hesitancy whatsoever to take it.
Now, initial deliveries of the newly approved Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine should start in the US tomorrow, helping to boost vaccination rates across the country. US regulators formally approved the single-shot Johnson & Johnson coronavirus vaccine on Saturday. The vaccine would be a cost-effective alternative to the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines and can be stored in a refrigerator instead of a freezer. The vaccine was developed mainly by J&J's Janssen Pharmaceutical Division. The company has agreed to provide the US with 100 million doses by the end of June. And US President Joe Biden hailed it as an exciting news for all Americans and an encouraging development, but warned that the fight is far from over. Now, Britain's Health Minister Matt Hancock has said that more than 20 million people across the UK have now received a COVID-19 shot. Hancock described it on Twitter as a magnificent achievement for the country, and he urged all people who get the call for an inoculation appointment to get the jab. Last week, Britain said more than 1 in 3 adults had received their first vaccination. Britain has rolled out Europe's fastest COVID-19 vaccination program, raising the prospect of a lifting of its current lockdown restrictions between now and the end of June. The UK has seen more than 4 million cases of the virus, with at least 1.23 lakh deaths. Now, the first case of the Brazilian variant of coronavirus has been identified in the UK. Up to 6 cases of a highly transmissible variant of coronavirus, first identified in the Brazilian city of Manaus, has been detected in Britain for the first time. 3 cases were found in England and another 3 in Scotland. The first 2 cases of the P.1 strain are from one household in South Gloucestershire with a history of travel to Brazil, but the third is not linked. The risk to the wider community from the Gloucestershire cases was considered low, but as a precaution, officials were moving quickly to deploy testing and increasing the sequencing of positive coronavirus samples from the area. A recent study by the World Health Organization found dozens of countries with cases of the South African and Brazilian variants, which include France, Greece, Switzerland, Austria, Denmark and Sweden in Europe, as well as Canada and the US.
This P1 variant is more transmissible than the original strains we saw from this virus. It is likely to have more antigenic change and therefore increase the risk of reinfections. And while we don't know the response to vaccine yet, we are concerned that we don't have spread of this that may impact on our vaccine program.
Up to 6 cases of variant of coronavirus first identified in the Brazilian city of Manaus have been detected in Britain for the first time. 3 cases were found in England and another 3 in Scotland, according to health officials. The risk of the wider community was considered low, but as a precaution, officials investigated the English cases, were moving quickly to deploy testing and increasing the sequence of positive coronavirus samples in the area. The P.1 variant detected in Manaus shares some mutations with the variant first identified in South Africa, and it is possible that it might respond less well to current vaccines. Late last year, Britain detected a more transmissible variant of coronavirus that is believed to have originated near London, and that led to a sharp rise in cases in the country and beyond. Germany has announced that travellers from France's northeastern Moselle region will face additional restrictions because of the high rate of variant coronavirus cases there. Cross-border travellers from Moselle will need to be able to show a recent negative coronavirus test from Tuesday. Earlier, France and Germany agreed that people crossing the border between the French region of Moselle and Germany will have to have a proof of a negative COVID-19 antigen test in the previous 48 hours. Germany has already introduced tough checks at its borders with the Czech Republic and Austria's Tyrol region, ignoring calls from Brussels to keep borders within the bloc open. Now, dozens of Brazilian protesters on Sunday outside of Brasilia governor's home to reject new lockdown measures in Brazil's capital amid a dramatic increase in new infections. The governor decreed a 24-hour lockdown for all but essential services on Friday to curb a worsening COVID-19 outbreak that has filled its intensive care wards to the brim. In Brazil, a dozen states running out of beds for patients locked down their main cities, and some declared a nighttime curfew to try to stop the spread of coronavirus as cases escalated to their worst level since the peak of the pandemic in July. Brazil has reported over 10.5 million coronavirus cases and more than 2.54 lakh deaths. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has said that it is too early to make a decision on reopening his country's border with the United States. In a television interview, Trudeau hailed the new leadership in the White House, citing U.S. President Joe Biden's approach towards the COVID-19 crisis as well as climate change.
Obviously, case counts, presence of variants, hospitalizations, all these things factor into the expert analysis. Our public health experts telling us what the right measures are and how concerned we have to be about variants. Obviously, as vaccinations increase, we're all hoping for good news and to get through this, but we'll continue to engage with the White House and with the administration on the best times to start releasing border measures. But for now, we all need to keep safe, and that means keeping them in place.
Now, protesters gathered at the Museum Plein to demonstrate against COVID measures in Amsterdam in Netherlands yesterday. Police turned up with water cannons, according to an eyewitness. A Dutch appeals court said on Friday that the government had been right to impose a night curfew in the fight against the coronavirus, overturning a lower court's order which had caused confusion over the measure last week. In a clear victory for the government, the appeals court said it had rightfully used emergency powers to enforce the curfew. COVID-19 infections in the Netherlands have jumped around 20% in the week through Tuesday. Data shows the total number of confirmed cases since the start of the pandemic surpassed 1 million earlier this month. Presently, the Netherlands have over 10,88,000 cases of the virus, along with the death toll surging past 15,600. And let's now take a look at what are the other updates that are making headlines across the globe as well. Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny has been transferred to a penal colony in the Vladimir region. The Moscow Public Monitoring Commission that defends the rights of prisoners and has access to people in custody said on its website. The state news agency TASS specified that Navalny will serve his term in the penal colony number 2 in Pokrov, about 100 kilometers east of Moscow. Navalny's whereabouts had been unknown since Thursday, when his allies learned that he was transferred out of one of Moscow's most infamous jails to an undisclosed location. Russia has launched its space satellite Arktika M on a mission to monitor the climate and environment in the Arctic amid a push by the Kremlin to expand the country's activities in the region. The satellite successfully reached its intended orbit after being launched from Kazakhstan's Baikonur Cosmodrome in a Soyuz rocket. According to Dmitry Rogozin, the head of Russia's Roscosmos Space Agency, Russia plans to send up a second satellite in 2023. In El Salvador, President Nayib Bukele voted in elections to choose new legislative and municipal authorities that could give a broad victory to the ruling party and consolidate his overhaul of traditional politics. Opinion polls show that Bukele's party, New Ideas, could win more than half of the mayoral positions and enough seats to hold at least a simple majority in Congress. Thousands of Haitians took to the streets in Port-au-Prince in Haiti to demand an end to President Jovenel Moïse's term in office as a constitutional crisis continues to escalate in the impoverished country. Political turmoil has engulfed the volatile Caribbean nation amid a dispute between Moïse's administration and the opposition over when the president's term is supposed to end. Italy's Mount Etna, Europe's tallest active volcano, erupted on Sunday morning, spewing black volcanic ash into the sky above Catania. Ash and rock fragments have covered roads and buildings in the nearby towns of Fornazzo and Santa Venerina, where residents use brooms to sweep volcanic ash on streets. The southeastern crater is the epicenter of the activity that started on the 16th of February and has lit up the volcano 7 times in the past days. The southeastern crater is at the epicenter of the activity that started on the 16th of February and has lit up the volcano 7 times in the past days. The 3,330-meter high volcano often erupts but rarely causes damage. The last major eruption was in 1992. The Sri Lankan Air Force is celebrating its 70th anniversary on the 2nd of March, and the presentation of the President's colours to No. 5 Fighter Squadron and No. 6 Helicopter Squadron of the Sri Lankan Air Force. As a gesture of solidarity and in keeping with years of close interaction and camaraderie between the two countries and their militaries, Indian Air Force and Indian Navy will participate in the event with an aerobatic display by Sarang, Suryakiran, Tejas fighter aircraft, Tejas trainer and the Dornier Maritime Patrol aircraft. A total of 23 aircraft of the Indian Air Force and Indian Navy will participate in the grand event. World Today Desk, DD India. Let's get you an update from the entertainment world as well. Full of glitz and glamour, the 78th edition of the Golden Globe Awards ceremony kicked off on Monday from both Los Angeles and New York. However, the ongoing pandemic situation did leave a mark on the ceremony, which shifted to virtual mode. More in this report.
After being delayed for nearly 2 months, one of the biggest film and television honors, the Golden Globe Awards, finally kick-started on Monday with a unique twist. The 78th edition of the awards ceremony went full virtual this time over coronavirus concerns. The ceremony saw drama Nomadland and satire Borat subsequent movie film sweeping away the top movie honors, while Nomadland bagged the Best Picture Drama Award and its director Chloe Zhao won the award for the Best Director. Borat took away the Best Picture in Comedy genre. Sacha Baron Cohen, creator of Borat's subsequent movie film from Amazon Studios, was named Best Comedy Movie Actor. Much to everyone's surprise, Andra Day emerged as a winner in the Best Actress category for playing singer Billie Holiday in The United States vs. Billie Holiday. While there are several moments of joy that were seen, there was a moment which left many in tears. That was when late actor Chadwick Boseman was named Best Movie Actor for Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, 6 months after his death at age 43. His widow, Simone Ledward Boseman, delivered a heartbreaking speech while accepting the award through tears on Boseman's behalf. In the television category, British royal drama The Crown, which focused its most recent season on the troubled marriage of Prince Charles and Princess Diana, was named the Best TV Drama. Actress Emma Corrin won the Best TV Actress, and Josh O'Connor won the Best Actor for The Crown at the ceremony. World Today Desk, DD India.
And here's your daily fix of all the offbeat and unique stories in our segment Beyond Headlines.
dancers of the Stuttgart Ballet Group in Germany dressed up in their classical costumes and jumped inside a PVC bubble to perform for German artist Florian Mennert. The artist's last photography project is called Social Distance Stacks, and to make it happen, he set up dancers, musicians and actors in air-filled bubbles, hoping to show the impact of social distancing during the pandemic. There is no Mr. in Mr. Potato Head anymore. The toy's maker, Hasbro, has announced that it is nixing the proper noun to let kids create all types of families. The names have been changed to potato heads that apply to Mr., Mrs. and their babies. Toys with the new branding will hit the store shelves in the fall, Hasbro has said, and a set of potato head family will retail $19.99. Archaeologists have unearthed a unique ancient Roman ceremonial carriage from a villa just outside Pompeii, the city buried in a volcanic eruption in 79 AD. The almost perfectly preserved four-wheeled carriage made of iron, bronze and tin was found near the stables of an ancient villa at Civita Giuliana, around 700 meters north of the walls of ancient Pompeii. The Culture Ministry of Italy has called it a unique find without any precedent in Italy. The archaeologists have found about two-thirds of the 66-hectare ancient town. The ruins were not discovered until the 16th century and organized excavations began about 1750. In England, an unexploded Second World War bomb was detonated in a controlled explosion by the authorities in southwest city of Exeter. The bomb, weighing about 1,000 kilograms, left a crater the size of two double-decker buses. Over 2,600 households and 12 university accommodations with 1,400 students were reportedly evacuated. The device was discovered by construction workers on Friday near a University of Exeter campus, prompting police to put a 400-meter cordon in place. Russian Lake Mochok has once again turned into a giant natural ice rink with picturesque views, attracting local citizens and bloggers from the whole republic. Amid this, the lake has now become the most sought-after destination for ice skaters. Half a kilometer wide, twice as long, the lake appeared in 1963 on the outskirts of the village Mochok at an altitude of more than 1,500 meters above sea level. The ice skating season on Mochok will last for one more month until the ice melts in spring. A colonial-era church in southern India marked its 150th anniversary of establishment by releasing pigeons, 150 balloons and distributing saplings. The CSI All Souls Church is one of the oldest Anglican chapels in India, which was built by the Britishers stationed in the area in the year 1872 under English statesman Warren Hastings. Elephants decorated with colourful cloth, ornaments and lights made their way down the streets of Colombo on Friday night in an annual festival that parades the sacred Buddha relics from a temple. The pageant started from the Gangaramaya Buddhist temple, where the relics were put onto the back of a tusker by Sri Lankan President Gotabaya Rajapaksa before it set off on the parade route along with musicians, dancers and dozens of elephants. World Today Desk, DD India.
And it's time now to turn the pages of history to see what major events took place on this day in history.
It was on this day in the year 1896 when French physicist Henri Becquerel discovered radioactivity through his investigations of uranium and other substances. In 1903, he shared the Nobel Prize for Physics with Pierre and Marie Curie. Becquerel is also known for his work on the plane polarization of light and with the absorption of light by crystals. A crime which caught international attention. It was on March 1st in 1932 when Charles Lindbergh Jr., the 20-month-old son of aviation hero Charles Lindbergh, was kidnapped from the family's new mansion in Hopewell in New Jersey. The baby was later found dead in the month of May. Lindbergh became an international celebrity when he flew the first solo flight across the Atlantic Ocean in 1927. On March 1st in 1966, Britain announced the historic and momentous decision to change over to decimal coinage in 1971. The Chancellor of the Exchequer, James Callaghan, announced the preparation for the changeover to begin at once with the introduction of a decimal currency bill. The switch took place in February in 1971. It was on March 1st in 1999 when General Olusegun Obasanjo was declared as Nigeria's president-elect. Obasanjo served as Nigerian general, statesman, diplomat and the first military ruler in Africa to hand over the power to a civilian government. He served as Nigeria's president between 1999 and 2007. It was on March 1st in 2003 when Roy Jones Jr. of Florida beat John Ruiz and claimed the WBA heavyweight title, becoming the first fighter in 106 years to capture middleweight, light heavyweight and heavyweight crowns. World Today Desk, DD India.
And let's get you a standing out sporting update as well. Ravichandran Ashwin, who became the fastest Indian bowler to 400 test wickets in the third test against England, climbed 4 spots to break into the top 3 of the ICC test rankings. India's opening batsman Rohit Sharma, who was the highest scorer in the Ahmedabad test, attained a career best ranking of 8th among batsmen as well. Rohit is now the 3rd Indian batsman along with Virat Kohli and Cheteshwar Pujara in the top 10.
India opener Rohit Sharma has progressed 6 places to a career best 8th position in the ICC men's test player rankings. Rohit gained from the fine performance in the low-scoring third test against England in Ahmedabad. Rohit top scored in the first innings with 66 and remained unbeaten on 25 in the second to move ahead of Cheteshwar Pujara, among others. Player of the match Akshar Patel and Ravichandran Ashwin have also made solid gains after helping carve out a crucial win that helped India remain in contention for the ICC World Test Championship final. Left arm spinner Patel's 11-wicket match haul has helped him gain 30 slots to reach 38th position, while off-spinner Ashwin's 7 wickets have lifted him 4 places to 3rd position. England spinner Jack Leach has entered the top 30 for the first time, moving up 3 places to 28 after taking 4 wickets. Captain Joe Root's maiden 5-wicket haul has lifted him 16 places to 72nd among bowlers. James Anderson, who went wicketless in the 3rd test against India, lost 3 places and slipped to the 6th place. Moreover, Jasprit Bumrah and Stuart Broad, who didn't get to bowl much on a surface that assisted spinners, dropped 1 place each. Sports Desk, DD India.
And that's all we have in this edition of World Today. But before we go, we now leave you with images of Myanmar, which is on the edge. Take a look and have a good evening. Namaskar.